Lenin, a block Gemara. We are up to Daf Samach Beis. Also Samach Beis Amid Aleph. So the last thing we learned was there's an argument between Baya and Rava. If you worship a person out of love or out of fear, is that called Avodah Zarah or not? According to Baya, that's called Avodah Zarah. And according to Rava, that's not called Avodah Zarah. At least you are Potter. And then we said, according to Abaya, an example of Shegig by Avodah Zarah is limited to a case where you knew there was an Avodah Zarah, you knew you're not allowed to do any of the services to Avodah Zarah, but you thought if you do it out of Ava and Yira to a person out of love or out of fear, that's not called Avodah Zarah. According to Rabbi, how do you ever have an example of Shegig by Avodah Zarah? If you didn't know it's Avodah Zarah, it's not Avodah Zarah at all. If you did know it's Avodah Zarah, it's Mazit. He said that the case of a Shegig, and it's not talking about a person Ava Yira because he holds his potter. His only case is Oime Mutter. That the shegig is you thought is totally permissible. You didn't realize it's Avodah Zarah at all. That's Oime Mutter. That's a shegig. And he says that a Helam Dover, which is a qualification for a Kohen Gadol or a Nazir according to Chachamim, or a Nasi, a Helam Dover is if you knew there was an Avodah Zarah, you knew there were certain services now do, but you didn't know those particular services also. You thought this service is totally mutter. That's called Helam Dover. So we're up to the Gemara now, about 4 lines to the top. We're up to now the Gemara. Tanya Rab Zakai, 5 lines on top of the page of Sama base. Tanya Rab Zakai Kamei Rab Yechon. Rab Zakai learned before Rab Yechon. So we have 4 main avodas that, regardless of it's conventional or not conventional, you're always chayiv misa. So what happens if it's a be'ach, v'kitev, v'nisach, v'yishtach, v'hem, all 4 avodas, but in one go. You didn't realize that it's asa, so you shechted it, and then you roasted it, and then you poured the libations, and then you prostrate yourself all in one go. He says, Ein chayiv alachas. In this case, since all of them have one thing in common, it's Avodah Zarah, you're over only one Aveda. You only chayiv. You did by b'shegig, you bring only one chatas. Amalei Abi Yochanan said, Puk tani lebra. This throw it outside is not right. But this is what you said is not right. Abi Yochanan argues. He said that you chayiv 4 different averis. It's 4 different malachas, 4 different averis. The basis for Rav Zakkai, as we'll see in the very end of the Gemara, Rashi brings is because the pasuk says loise of them, one word that encompasses all the different services of Avodah Zarah. So one word is loise of them. You breached loise of them. Amar Abba said, I don't know why you tossed it out completely. Isn't what Rav Zakkai said? A machlekes tanoim. The famous machlekes that we learned already a number of times, including Sanhedrin, have an order. Why, if the Torah says you're not allowed to do 39 malachas, the Torah talks about 39 malachas on Shabbos. Why does the Torah spell out 1 malacha? Or maybe 2, but definitely 1. Why highlight fire? We have a machlekes Rabbi Yisrael Nosson. Why? The discussion now, Gemara here is by Avodah Zarah. You did a number of the avodas of Avodah Zarah in one go with one helam. You didn't realize also do you bring 4 different? For every avodah you bring a different avera, a different carbon, or we say it's 1 carbon for all of them. So Rabbi Zakkai said you bring 1 carbon for them all. Rabbi Yechon disagreed and he said to throw it out the window. And now comes along Rabbi Abba says regarding we see the same thing by Shabbos. Apply it here. By Shabbos we say that there's a machlekes. Why does the Torah say you shouldn't light a fire in your midst? It's part of the malachas. So that the first Rabbi Yasi says, you know why the Torah said it is different. All other malachas you get skila. But for burning, all you get is a lap. And Rab Nosson says, no, l'chalik yotzes. Rab Nosson says that the reason why the Torah says the Yisur of Havar is to tell you that just like here's 1 malacha and you're going to get chayiv, so to any 1 malacha you chayiv. We already discussed the last time, the Machlekes and Yehud and others, how to understand what we would have thought. But bottom line is, but bottom line is that you are... is there to tell you that for each particular 39 malachas on Shabbos, you get for each malacha you get a separate carbon chatas, even though you did it all in one go. Now the one who says that havara is written there to tell you a lav, I'll argue the same thing by kabbanas, by Avodah Zarah. Hishtachava. Why does the Torah highlight? We already said before why the Torah highlights Zavech, we said that's to teach you that the avodas pnim, the internal avodas, I don't care if it's inside, if it's darko, like a darko, whether it's conventional or not, you're always chayiv. So that's aside. Hishtachava. Why does the Torah say hishtachava? So you wanted to learn from the other one that malachas that but they're covered. That you're chayiv, you're chayiv. At least it's not Aveda. I'm telling you that Hishtachava is written to tell you L'chalak or L'lav. That's a machlekes. The one opinion says L'chalak, so each one you get a separate korban chatas, and the other one says no, that it's L'lav yotzes to tell you that you don't get skila for Hishtachava, you don't get L'lav. So this what Abzake said is, and Rabbi Yechon are arguing, is actually machlekes anoim. Maskiv Lord Rabbi Yisrael. What are you talking about? Over there by Shabbos, they're arguing because we have a pasuk that really we will always rather say l'chalak yotzes. Why would we rather say l'chalak yotzes? Because we have a rule. Something was included in the klal and then it was separated. It's loya al atzma yotzes el al klal kula yotzes. Not just teach you a unique din regarding itself that this is different. It's to reflect on everything else. L'chalak yotzes is to teach you on everything else. You know why over here we say Rabbi Yisrael says it's a lav yotzes because we know already l'chalak from somewhere else. But since we don't know the chalak from anywhere else, I have a choice. What am I going to use the word ishtachava for? Am I going to teach you that's only a lav, or am I going to tell you that's coming to teach you on the whole cloud that every avodah in avodah zara you get a separate korban chatas if you did them all together? Of course, I'd rather learn that the chalak yotzes, and that's what Rabbi Yechon is arguing with Zaka. What's the story? Master Rabbi Yisrael, Dilma Akel Rabbi Yisrael says, the nafkei malachas ma'achas mehena. We learn chilik malachas and other parts go together. There's a general pasuk that says that a nefesh that commits a sin by shegig from any of the mitzvahs. So we're not talking about Shabbos. There's only any Aveda where there's a korban chatas. And there it says, the asa me'achas mehena. The words here are extra. First of all, what do you mean from one of them? Could have said, the asa achas mehena, one of these. Or it could have said, the asa me'achas hena. From one of these. Why does it say remember each word? And then the word mehena is extra. Because it asa achas. You did one. So we're going to learn. Each mem comes to reduce. There's achas, a whole one, and mem is part, me'achas, even part of it. Heina, them, in plural, and mehena, from them. And then you can have, since one word is extra, we're going to dash in, there's an achas. Sometimes you do one aveda, and heina, you're going to bring many karbanas. And sometimes heina, you can do many avedas, and achas, you bring only one carbon. How does that work? So Tanya, and sometimes you're going to bring, you did many Avedas, you bring one carbon, and sometimes you bring each one separately. Well, Rabbi Yisrael explains. My time with Rabbi Yisrael, what does he learn out from the Siva? Also, me'achas mehena. So we dash as follows. Achas, it could have said achas and says me'achas. Could have said heina, it says mehena. And then the word achas or heina, one of them is extra. So we're going to dash in a third and fourth thing. Achas, one aveda, shehena, you bring multiple karbanas, and the hena, multiple aveda, sheachar, bring one carbon. And we explain now. Achas, a full aveda, Shimon. You write the name Shimon on Shabbos, for example. Me'achas is you wrote Shem Shimon. You wrote the first two letters. You wanted to write the whole word, but you only wrote two letters. And according to Rashi, Moshe Shainim, two letters, Shin Mem, is also a word. Since you complete a word, you chayiv. According to some of the Shainim, even if it wasn't a word, two letters of any word. You wrote two letters, that's already considered a word, even though it's not really a word that's used, and therefore you be chayiv. Okay, so that's achas me'achas. Then what's heina mehena? Heina is others, there are many others malachas, and mehena is like a step down, which I told us. So in other words, you have on Shabbos, you have 39 others malachas, and it says that it matters that each of malach has 39 tuldas. Then you have achas, one aveda shehi heina. What do you mean one aveda if you bring multiple kabbanas? Zod Shabbos was Gogas malachas. You knew what Shabbos, but you didn't know that these malachas. You knew Shabbos. You thought Shabbos maybe the only thing you're not doing Shabbos is carry. You didn't know you're not allowed to fire. You didn't know you're not allowed to cook. You didn't know you're not allowed to sew and all these things. So even though you did, So in this case here, there's 4, 5, 6, 7 Gogas. You bring for each one a korban chatas. But heina shiachas, how is it you did many? You only bring one carbon. Shiga Shabbos v'zad malachas. You knew that on Shabbos you're now doing 39 malachas. You knew them all, but you didn't realize today was Shabbos. You thought today was Friday. So therefore, there's only one shegig here, even though you did a multiple malachas. You bring only one carbon. So we have a special carbon of chilik malachas by Shabbos. So therefore, what do you do with havara? Why? So Rabbi Yisrael says, "Not come to chilik malacha." I know already from achas mehena. So what I do with the loisivaru, I'll tell you, it comes to the lav yotzes. But over here, we don't have anywhere else by avodah zara to learn the concept of chilik malachas. Now I have a choice. Why does the Torah say the word ishtachava? To teach you chilik malachas, which teaches it on all the hilchos of avodah zara, or something unique about ishtachava that this is different punishment, you only get a lot. Of course, I'd rather do a kal kula yotza, that whenever the Torah, that's the rule. When the Torah says an exception, when the Torah was included, to tell you about the entire rule. The Kuli Alma, everyone will agree. There's Tachabal the Chalak Yotze, Tachabal the Chalak, and therefore Rabbi Yechon told Rav Zakkai took Puktan Lebra. This is what you said. You bring one carbon if you did for shechting and roasting and libations is not right. Chiluk, what do you mean? This pasuk that we just use for Shabbos is not talking about Shabbos. It's talking about generally karma chatois. So why can't you use that for everybody? The same thing. Why, if you're going to learn chilik malachas on Shabbos from the pasuk achas mehena, it talks about karma chatos. And if you did achas, if you did, ve'asa achas mehena, you dash it from there chilik malacha. You did 39 malachas on Shabbos, and sometimes you bring 39 karbanos, right? If you have knew with Shabbos, you know all these malachas. So apply the same thing to avodah zarah because it's talking about any chatas. So there's chiluk. We know from here. We know that if you shechted and you roasted, there's chiluk malachas. We know that already here. So then why does the Torah say shtachava to teach you the lav yotzes? So therefore, what do you call it? The same machlekes between Abiyasi and Abnasan there will be here as well. But Chilik malacha that we have nami tepli machas meina. Why can't you learn chilik malachas? Also from what do you call it? From achas mehena. Why do you have to use ishtachava? Let's taka say that according to Rabbi Yasi, he will learn chilik malacha b'avodah zarah from somewhere else, and he'll taka hold that ishtachava by here is a lav, the lav yotzes, and therefore the same machlekes that we have between the Tanaim. Like Abba said, is the same machlekes of Zakir Rabbi Yonatan. What's the story? Achas. I'll explain to you. First of all, we say achas me'achas, right? A whole malacha and part malacha. What would that be by avodah zarah? Well, you have to shech. Normally, you shech two simonim. If you only shechted one of the trachea, let's say, or not the esophagus or the esophagus of the trachea, so by a carbon oilus oif, that's good enough. We'll say by avodah zarah you chayiv as well. That's me'achas, part of the aveda. Achas mehena, achas zvicha, and me'achas a siman echad. You did only one of the two signs. Then Heino, we said before by Shabbos, Heino is Abbas and the other one, and Meheino is Tuldas. I'll say that as well. Heino is Abbas, the Sebuach, Kitun, these are the four primary avodas, right? Shechting and libation, all that. And Meheino is Tuldas. What would be an example of Tuldas? If it's the conventional way of Shava Makal for now. If you break a stick in front of it, that's the kind of avodah that it is. For example, in a certain avodah zarah, where the way you do it is you break the back of the animal. That's how you serve this avodah zarah. So if you break the stick, it's a katulda of that. So it should be chayiv as well. Sorry. That's right. So somehow the way what they would do it is they would stand in front of the avodah zarah, take a stick and whack it on the back of an animal. So what's the avodah? The stick breaking something. Is the stick then, for example, you broke the stick itself? That'll be a tulda. Achashihena, one aveda that many. You knew it's avodah zarah. You knew there's only one avodah shechting. You didn't realize burning is an avodah. You didn't realize bowing down is an avodah. Okay, so you get a few and what's hena shiachas? You did a few avedas. You only bring one carbon. Shigas avodah chadin. You didn't realize it's avodah zarah. And v'zad avodas, but you knew you're not a shech by v'zad. You just didn't realize this is avodah zarah. Now the Gemara asked the same question we had before yesterday. If you didn't realize avodah zarah, there's no avodah zarah is all in your mind. It's not just what you're going, the motions you're going through, but it's in your mind. So if you didn't know it's avodah zarah, it's not a shaygik. There's no avodah zarah at all. But how do you have an example of you're trying to learn, the same with Shabbat by avodah zarah, and therefore you're going to say this with chal yotzes. How? Give me an example of shaygik by avodah zarah. How is it possible? He goes into this building and thinks it's a church and full of avodah zarah. He throws up basic knesses, bow down. No, how do you live in Shemaim? There's no avodah zarah at all. Elo the Chazan Drati saw statues. A lot of statues are there just to give cover to whoever it is, the reigning king. But sometimes it's used in avodah zarah. Now, this and he bowed down to it. If he thought that this avodah zarah, no. Where's the shaygi here? And he like Kabbalah. He thought it's just the bust of the king. It's not the covered. Then like Kumu. It's not possible that the case of shaygi. But if he didn't know it's avodah zarah, then it's not avodah zarah. Ella me'ava umiyira. So the only case is he knew there's avodah zarah. He knew there's avodas. And he saw this, he loved this person, or he scared this person, and therefore he bowed down, he did whatever avodas this person is. He didn't realize that that's also called avodah zarah. That's a case of shaygig. He knew avodah zarah, he knew avodas, and he did this out of love to this person. He didn't realize doing out of love for this person is called avodah zarah. Is honichel by that only makes sense to go by you take a hold of the zara. No machayv. Rabbi put the Michael name. Rabbi hold the stand of the zara. What do you say then? So according to Rabbi, we were saying top of the page. Rabbi also has the case of a shaygig is ba'omer mutter. If Rabbi says ba'avodah zara, if you didn't realize the cloud is an aveda avodah zara, that's the case of shaygig. Even though you think it's not avodah zara at all, he says in the case where omer mutter, then there's no avodah zara. He thought that it doesn't exist avodah zara in the Torah. That will call a shaygig. So what happens over here now? So he didn't know there was avodah zara, nor did he know that there was avodas. Now we have let's resolve a question. We said before that if you forgot it Shabbos, today's Shabbos, but you knew all these avodas, so you bring one carbon. If you knew it was Shabbos, but you didn't realize these were avodas, so you bring the multiple carbonos depending. Then we ask a question, what about Helam Zevazeh? You didn't know that they were Shabbos, you didn't know that these were avodas. So what happens then? Do you bring only one carbon for Helam, or do you bring all the multiple carbonos because you had two halamas? Which one do we focus on? So the Chayda Tifshed, let's resolve the question of Rabbi the Rabbi Nachman. Hell is ever the Bilam. Tifshed and Chayv Lachas. The Paishet that you're saying over here that you consider Shaggy, you didn't know Avodas Zara. You didn't know Bechlal that these were their Avodas, these are Avodas, and you tell me it's called Shaggy. So let's bring it out for me that we look at it as the source, as a Helam that you bring only one carbon. Says you might hold it, Kasha, it's not a problem. But Tifshed. Let's resolve the question. Who said you can't be patient? Let's be patient here, Taka. We don't look at the Avedas, we look at the source. Since you forgot, you didn't know it was a carbon. There's Aveda at all. And you didn't know Avedas, you know what? You'll bring only one carbon because you didn't know it's Aveda at all. Bottom line is there's an example of Shagig. So why can't we say the same drosha we have by Shabbos, we have here by Avodah Zarah? So if you learn Chilik Malachas from this pasuk here, then the Shtachava only comes for Lav. And the other opinion that doesn't learn Chilik Malachas from here, he learns it from Leisav Araweish, will learn it from Shtachava. Says the Gemara, you cannot learn this psukim by Chatzah at all. This pasuk Achas Mein is not talking about Chatzah. Why? Because we know we already had yesterday. Bim Mashiach, a kohen Mashiach, anointed kohen, the first base Hamikdash, till the oil was hidden. Over the din is that he brings a different kind of a carbon than all the other Eden. He brings a carbon, a male chatas, where all the Eden he brings a bull. All the Eden bring a female chatas. Anas brings a male chatas, and generally speaking, they need helim. They need a helim dover as well as doing a shaggy. In other words, it's not enough that they forgot that today is whatever Shabbos. They had to also have a helim dover. They had to think that something was mutter. And we're going to learn, Maharis and all that. So that's how. But by Avodah Zarah is an Uisnam, is an exception. They bring the same carbon that every Eid brings. They bring a female chatas. And the question is, does that mean also that the process to get to that is like a Yid or not? In other words, they also have to have a shagig. They still need the normal dinim, which is a helim and a shagig, or just a shagig itself. So the Gemara says, but Mashiach par, normally Mashiach brings a bull. Normally a Nasi brings a male chatas. Uvi Yachin normally brings a kizba, a female sheep or field goat. The everyone agrees everyone agrees that he brings a goat like one, but nothing else is it like another person, and therefore you cannot compare it to Hilchos Shabbos or anything else, because a kohen who brings his own carbon is very, very different. And so therefore we see from what Avodah Zarah, which is what we're talking about over there, is different. Than we don't compare it to Shabbos. We say it's different. Shabbos, a kohen gadol is going to bring a bull and a thing, but the laws of Avodah are totally different. So therefore this pasuk is not talking about Avodah Zarah at all. So therefore we slug up what we said before. The Rav Zakkai and Abiyas are arguing like Rabbi Yosef asked. He says, I have another pshat in Zakkai. Maybe learn. This is what Avlaka said. In front of Rabbi Yechon. There's a chumrah in Shabbos over all other mitzvahs. There's a chumrah the chumrah in all other mitzvahs over Shabbos. The chumrah of Shabbos is Shabbos Osa Stein Behel Mechel Chayiv Kolach Avach. Shabbos you did two malachas. You bring two kabbanis. Masha ain't came b'sham mitzvahs. We'll soon see what's the example of other mitzvahs. What's the chumrah of other mitzvahs? B'sham mitzvahs shaglam is kaven chayiv. All other mitzvahs. If you made a shagig, but you had no intention, we're not talking about a normal shagig. A normal shagig is just a shagig. Lemon kaven means that you're like a misasik. You didn't realize you thought that this was not fat. It was tater fats, but you thought that it was liquid. It was melted down. You thought it was a drink. So not only was it a shagig, you also lemis kaven. You didn't. Your machshava wasn't to eat fats at all. Now, a normal shagig is machshava eat fat. You just didn't realize it was safe. That's a shagig. Here, you didn't realize it was fat. You thought it was a drink because it was all melted. Is chayiv. Other mitzvahs you're chayiv because the fact that your body had pleasure, and therefore you're chayiv. As we'll see soon. Masha'ekin b'Shabbos. Masha'ekin b'Shabbos. If you're misasik, it didn't. If your intentions weren't carried out, you're a potter. And the example we give later is you wanted a cut. You thought that this cabbage was detached, and you gave it a cut. Turned out to be it was attached to the ground. Machlekes Rashi says that this very piece you thought was tolush turned out to be mechuber, or you wanted to cut this piece and another piece you cut by mistake, which happened to be mechuber. Either one, the idea is that your machshava wasn't really carried out. Your machshava was to cut a loose one, a detached cabbage, and it turned out to be that there was something else. It's not just a shagig, it's a misasik. Let's analyze the what happened. As Zaka said, what's strict about Shabbos? Shabbos is time you do two averes. Let's say you cooked and you lit a fire and you cooked two averes, you bring two kabbanis, and the rest of the time you only bring one. What's the example? What's the contrast? Take it on me. Let's say on Shabbos. You cut and you ground. Okay, two malachas. The kavasik abasham mitzvahs. What will be an example by other mitzvahs? The ochel chaylev v'dam. You did two separate avedas. You ate treif fats and you drank blood. Nu hachatatem chayiv v'dachad. What's the difference? You chayiv in both cases two kabbanis.
In Shabbos.
Give an example by other mitzvahs, as we'll soon see. Ela gabasham mitzvahs. The ain't chayiv alachas. Where do you find by other mitzvahs that you only chayiv one for doing two avedas? Must be the same aveda twice. You ate chaylev in the morning, you ate treif fats in the morning, and an hour later you ate it again. So you did the same halacha twice. You bring only one carbon. So what would be a Shabbos? The avat tziduk tziduk. But Shabbos, the example would be not that you harvested and then you ground it. It has to be the same thing twice. No, also you bring one carbon. What's the difference? So what's the contrast? Behind normally, that's how Yechon said puk ton lebra. Doesn't make sense. This whole brisa. You know my kusha. Why don't we say that the contrast is avodah zarah, and we'll follow what Rab Ami said, which is what we just learned before. Rab Zaka said in the previous Gemara, and that is, you did two different malachas avodah zarah, you bring only one carbon. If you shechted and then you roasted it, you bring only one carbon, which is exactly like Shabbos. So by Shabbos, you bring two, you cut and you ground, you bring two karbanos, and by avodah zarah, you bring only one. Why can't you say that? Exactly what Zaka said before, that we didn't like. And where did he learn from it actually before? Because it says loise of dame. There's one word that incorporates all the malachas of Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara doesn't like to learn about Avodah Zarah. The Tani Sefer, look at the next part. It says, what's the chum of all the mitzvahs? Shar mitzvahs, shagag b'lemeskav, you did a shaging, you had no intention of doing this particular thing. For example, you thought it was detached and term attached. Chayiv, by Shabbos, sorry, all of the mitzvahs chayiv. And by Shabbos, you're a potter. What's an example? Where do you have a shagig by Avodah Zarah? Saying more again. How do you find the shagig? He thought it was a shul. Bowed down. But it's all in the mind. He thought it wasn't Avodah Zarah. He's not Avodah Zarah. He saw a statue of a sagle. Bowed down to it. He accepted it as a god. The Mezru. If he didn't accept it as a god, then again, he did nothing. He knew Avodah Zarah, but he didn't realize that you do it out of love, of fear of a person. It's also, and you're worshiping the person. It's Avodah Zarah. Is Hanichal Abai that said that's Avodah Zarah? Okay, example of shagig. Do Amachai that you are chayiv. Ella Rav, according to Rav, the Amapot, Rav says that you are pot. Michael Meimer. Ella, but Oimemut is talking about a case where he thought that is totally permitted. Right? He thought that there's no Avodah Zarah at all in the entire Torah. That's an example of a shagig. Avi, according to Rav, is not Avodah Zarah. You're potter. He shouldn't do it, but potter. But according to Rashi, talking about a person, you're doing out of love of this person, or no, that you're worshiping that person. You're worshiping the person, and you love the person. So if you're worshiping him, you didn't realize that's called Avodah Zarah also, or out of fear. That's what we brought Haman. Haman was the example we brought that people do it out of fear. Okay, we gave an example of Haman because Haman they did out of fear, and Mordechai refused to bow down. Mash Enken b'Shabbos, the potter gamle Shabbos, you'd be totally potter. What? Imamut b'Shabbos, you're totally potter. Says the Gemara. Right, because by Avodah we're saying that you're still chayiv this kind of shegig, but by Shabbos, if you didn't know that it's Shabbos, that Shabbos exists, and you didn't know malachas like a tinuk shenishba we had in the seventh pedic of Shabbos, you're totally potter. Ad kan like by Rav Nachman, Moshe says can't be. When did the Rav ask Rav Nachman a question? Helim zebezeh ela ilichi v'chadil chuvitart potter legamri lekamandama. By Shabbos, the question was if you didn't know it was Shabbos. You thought it was Friday, and you didn't know all of these were malachas. So do you bring one because you know it's Shabbos? Or you bring the multiple chatayis for all the malach you did. But in the case you're saying that I'm a mutter. You didn't know it existed at all. If you didn't know it existed at all, there's no carbon at all. There's no shaking at all. You just didn't know that all exists like an honest. Nobody asked such a question at all. I know that such a thing exists. Mike, if you want my kush, I'm gonna ask a question. It's not a problem. This is how we're going to learn of Zakah. The Bryce of Zakah quoted, we're learning like this. The first part where you draw a contrast on a Shabbos, you did two malachas, you bring two karbonas, and this other thing which we'll call Avodah Zarah, you shechten, you burnt, you only bring one carbon. Fine. That's the contrast. Shabbos Avodah Zarah. Sefer, when it talks about the Sefer, the contrast of a shegig beloy miskaven, that whether you chayav a potter, b'shar mitzvahs. Well, let's say we're not talking about this part, not talking about Avodah Zarah. And it's talking about what? All other mitzvahs. What's an example of shegi beloy miskaven? The kasava, it's not just the shegi he didn't know Zaveda. He thought reiku it spit, ubeloyoy, and he swallowed, realized it was tray for fats. So it's not only that he didn't, he didn't know about Zaveda, he just didn't know his machshava didn't get carried through. A normal shegi is you knew exactly what you were doing, but you didn't know it was an Aveda. Here, you thought it was something else. So your machshava didn't get carried out. Mashenki b'Shabbos the potter. What would be the example of Shabbos your potter? So you're saying here that shegi b'lei miskaven your chayiv, and Shabbos your potter. What's the example of Shabbos your potter? Miskaven. Sheniskaven lag biachatolos. You thought you're lifting something which is cut off already. The chotach esam mechuber. Either it itself turned out to be attached, or the chotach mechuber you cut the wrong one. Either one, your machshava didn't get, your intention wasn't carried through because it turned out to be a mistake. Potter. So why by other avedas are you chayiv? Shabbos you potter. Why by other chayiv? We're talking about eating. If you ate fats or you're involved in arroz, things that give pleasure to your body, and didn't realize what you were doing, you're chayiv. Even though you didn't really do, you're chayiv. You came because you had pleasure. And it actually says as if you had intention. Adds that it's a question here is not just a kavanah. The question is that the kavanah, that you intended to have pleasure with it. The question is that you didn't even have this in mind, right? You want to do something else. You didn't realize that this is fats. So the Alter Rebbe said because your body had pleasure, it's as if you had machshava for this very thing itself. Your machshava switched. Now that you drank this thing there and you enjoyed it, it turned out to be that it was really fats. It's as if your goof was eating fats and as if you had a machshava to eat that fats because your body enjoyed it. Your body changed the machshava here. Why are you potter on Shabbos? So why is it different? Why taka Shabbos? If everybody else is chayiv, or at least a shegi, you got to bring a carbon. Why Shabbos a potter? Because there we have an additional thing. Meleches machshavas asra Torah. Because there the Torah has an extra criteria. You have to have intention, and if the intention didn't carry through, you are potter. So therefore, why can't we just learn that Zakah is right? And the Bryce is talking about two different parts. The first part is contrasting to Avodah Zarah, and the second part is contrasting to all of the mitzvahs. Says again,
It's the same thing.
No, only by Shabbos we have. If you remember, every Aveda you have to have intention. But Melech Machshavas is a different kind of Machshava. Machshava is that your mind. So normally we say even though you had no Machshava to eat flavor fats, you thought of the drink, but the Hana changes it. By Avodah Zarah doesn't work. And why by Shabbos are you? And Shabbos you're pot. Why by Shabbos you are probably comparing now Shabbos to all of the mitzvahs, not Avodah Zarah, because what do you call it? By Shabbos we have a special halach Moshe Sinai. If you remember, we had in the Mishnah of the Chagig at the end of the first Perek that these are horim atlim beside the mountains that hang on here. The concept of by Shabbos, Melech Shabbos, what does it say? And we learn all the Melech Shabbos come from there. So you might include. You know why Rabbi Yechon didn't like Zakai's words? because Rabbi Yechon once said in the Hamafkid, he doesn't like this shot to change. The first part of the Mishnah is talking about contrasting the Vayzos and Shabbat. You know why? If somebody can explain to me that the Mishnah follows one opinion, I don't like when you divide the Mishnah into two different, we're talking about two different inyanim, and the Mishnah doesn't say so. I would I would carry his clothes after him lebei masusa to the bathhouse. In other words, I don't accept that Yabraisa can have two things. Continue tomorrow, Mitzvah.